Well, I guess since this is becoming more of a spooky camping story thread, I'll post mine. Since it's kind of long, I'm not going to Greentext. I was in the Boy Scouts until about 6th grade, and the summer before I quit I went to a summer camp in a muggy Florida marsh savanna area. If you've ever been to Florida in the summer, you know it gets ridiculously hot and humid and rainy, so the summer camp was a complete disaster weather-wise. But me and a few of my friends didn't like it for a very different reason. Now each camp had a colossal pavilion in the center surrounded by assorted palmettos and tents. These tents were A-frame style permanent tents atop rotting pallets, which made the whole camp look like an abandoned military base. These A-frames were made of disgusting 20-plus-year-old tarps that insulated really well. This was a fucking nightmare in South Florida because moisture plus heat would stay in each tent and make each night a living hell for its residents. Add mosquitoes the size of your ballsack and the entire campout was a disaster. Our scoutmaster was a giant douche, so he made us earn a minimum of 10 merit badges that week, so that meant we had to attend 10 classes to earn them. These classes took place in screened pavilions around the main mess hall at the center of the giant campground, with some of the bigger merit badges, whittling, archery, next to the mess hall, and the smaller, less important ones, birdwatching, electricity, were only accessed by a single dirt trail and a 10-minute walk. I'm a pretty natural leader, so I led one of those inner circle kind of clubs within my troop, called the Blind Koalas or some other stupid name, so we could have a koala bear with glasses and a cane flying over our camp like the little jokesters we were. I convinced my fellow koalas to take 10 super easy merit badges so we could get done early, and we snuck our Game Boy Advances into camp so we could go hang out in the woods and play our new Pokémon games. Ruby and Sapphire had just come out. My friends were all for it, so we did just that. We snuck out really fucking far into the woods outside the camp, off the regular path, and into the savannah. We made it out at about 3, but before we started to play our game where no one could find us, we saw a really run-down house. When I say house, I don't mean a cabin, or even a concrete block where the Rangers live. I mean full-on chimney and porch suburban home just plopped in the middle of the fucking woods like a bad Photoshop, with no roads leading up to it. This place would have looked perfect had it not looked like Father Time took a dump on it. It was kind of blocked by some pine trees, so we didn't see it coming out. We went up to the window on its porch and peeked inside. Boxes piled above eye level filled the entire house. No furniture or anything, just boxes of what appeared to be magazines, newspapers, and other printed material. The only other thing besides those boxes was a broken wheelbarrow leaning against a window on the opposite side. We were about to open the door to go inside, no matter how scared we were, because we wanted to check out those boxes. Then the most blood-curdling noise ever came from the house. The only way I could describe it is like someone twanging the piano wire from the inside of the piano, so it came out. It was so unnatural and unnerving we booked it the hell out of there and ran to the mess hall. Apparently we had been gone for 2 hours, but it felt like 5 minutes. The sun hadn't even changed in the sky. They kept saying it was 5:30, but the sun was barely where it would be at 3. It didn't go down until 8 that night for some reason. It got so much worse though. When it got dark that night, it got really fucking dark. At 8 the sun just barely disappeared over the horizon. At 9 you wouldn't have remembered what the sun looked like. We kept fire going and trying to calm our nerves after that house we found yelled at us. Eventually we had enough Slim Jims and ghost stories and we went to our grotty ass A-frames. I was kind of fat back then, so I was eaten alive by mosquitoes every night, and I had placed a mosquito net over my cot to save me from their wretched onslaught. It did minimal amounts of protecting and acted as more of a shitty curtain. I tried going to sleep, but it was just so fucking hot in the A-frame I had to remove everything but my boxer briefs to stay cool. About 2 in the morning I think I hear a loud thong from the next tent over. I jolt upright and tangle myself in my net and scramble on the rotting pallet to free myself. I fall through and fall into the conveniently placed ant pile underneath the pallet. I manage to save myself before I get eaten, but I was so groggy and so much adrenaline through my bloodstream I barely knew what was going on before I heard another loud thonk a foot away. The A-frame collapsed on top of me and my bunkmate and we crawled out from underneath. I looked next door to the other A-frames and watched them fall like dominoes, each with a sickening thonk as the pillars holding them up fell down. I could barely make out a tall figure in red and white dart from behind one of the tents to another, but I couldn't tell. It was too early in the morning to make a positive ID. It was chaos. My whole troop had collapsed A-frames, and the entire pillar to erect the fucking thing was broken. The piece to slide into the pallet has snapped clean off. Now these A-frames were old, but it's still pretty difficult to break a 4-inch by 4-inch block of wood in two with one swipe. I ran out in my boxer briefs to make sure everyone was okay, and we told our douche scoutmaster someone had knocked down every A-frame in the camp. We marched down to the camp ranger and told him, and he said he'll go out and help us find the guy who did it. About an hour later the camp director drives up in a jeep with some short fat kid in a black ninja outfit in the back. He tells us the kid confessed to knocking them over and it's a mystery solved. Everyone came forth and called bullshit, mostly because the agreed upon profile for our suspect was a tall, probably 6 feet 5 inches or so lean guy in red and white. The ranger waved it off as some kind of joke and said he had a confession and he was going to get everything sorted out by morning. We tried finding the house again the next day and couldn't find it. I was about to just shrug and say fuck it when my friend who was in the first A-frame to get knocked over came up to me at dinner on the last night. He was kind of nervous to talk to me and hasn't really been himself, and he told me he smelled something really fucking shitty before he woke up that morning. He looked up and saw the figure staring at him, and he thought it was the weirdest fucking thing. It was a person, it wasn't a spooky skeleton or anything, but the guy was really fucking tall, with lanky ass arms and smelled like straight up death and shit, so much he said he could see stink lines coming off of him. He said the guy was obviously quite old and gray, but the weirdest thing was that he was wrapped up in bandages and a headdress, like a fucking mummy. A mummy, in South Florida. I laughed it off and just told him it was just some asshole fucking with us. He just sighed and continued to eat his gloop. The weirdest shit didn't start until we came home from camp. There were 10 people who had their tents knocked over, excluding me and my bunkmate, and out of those 10, 8 of them had burglars clean their place out while at camp. Only me and the kid who thought he saw a mummy were spared. His house burned down a month later, the fire department saying someone had thrown incendiary devices into the windows at night while they were sleeping, even though there was no broken glass or open windows. I guess the pattern here had to do with houses. Nothing has really happened to my house. I moved a couple months after dropping scouts, and the last I heard my old house was still there. I honestly have no idea what the fuck any of it means, but it's creepy as shit to think about. No one I know from that troop is still in it. They dropped it around the same time as I did. I heard we all dropped a ton of weight too. None of us are fat anymore, and I've been told I look too skinny now. Did we drop scouts for the same reason? Maybe. I have no idea what to expect from it or this story, and I know it's shitty as fuck to end a story like that, but the only other creepy thing is that I find ants in my stuff all the time and it's annoying as hell. I like to think it has something to do with this, but in reality it's probably another shitty thing to deal with in life. I get bit a lot still, though, and I have to cover myself with band-aids so I won't itch them all the time.